Episode 9, welcome back to Price of Purpose. Breaking the loop today is what we're going to be talking about. And the quote is going to get us kicked off, and I'm excited about it. And so I'll read that, open us with prayer, and let's get into it. Let's get cracking. Today's quote is an Italian proverb that says, "We are born crying, live complaining, and die disappointed."
If you choose it.
If you choose. But we are going to be talking about the cycles and the loops that more times than not people, I myself, you, we've talked about, that we get caught in that lead to the same result consistently for people's lives. And at the end of it, we find people that continually say that I started out crying, I lived a life complaining, and I died, or getting to the end, being disappointed. And we don't want that. And that's what we're trying to explore. So, Jesus, thank you for this morning. Thank you for the chance to learn and grow. I pray that we'd be challenged, that we would seek your truth, your understanding, that we could see past the limitations of this world and think with a kingdom mindset that is not bound by the limitations we so often allow ourselves to get caught in. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. What keeps us stuck in patterns that sabotage our future?
One of the biggest things that I have done so often that keeps me stuck in a spot is by blindly believing whatever's put in front of me. You know, blind faith, even in Christianity, is talked about a lot. And nowhere in the Bible is it talked to where we just have to blindly believe, even God. He has given us instructions, directions. He sent his son to live a life as an example. Jesus gave us an example prayer in the Bible. That way, even if we don't know what to pray, we can use that prayer to consistently impact our life. But when we blindly believe things without questioning, without using our imagination, without saying why, and finding that out and that information and the answer to that question on our own, going on that journey and the adventure that I believe God is calling every one of us to. He is calling us to be trained, to be conditioned. It says in James to consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because it produces endurance and perseverance. Why would we need perseverance? Why would it be considered pure joy to face trials if we are not training and being called to become something better than who we currently are?
And for just being autonomous.
Yeah. Like if it's just blind faith and it's something that we are just to throw our hands up and say it's out of my control, I'm gonna let somebody else do it, it would completely negate the relationship factor of growing and becoming the person that looks more like Christ and less like the earthly version of ourselves that is addicted and drawn to sin every day of our lives.
I feel like the verse, "lean not on your own understanding," gets taken out of context in this regard. I've seen a lot of Christians use that verse as a way to not have to pursue farther or go deeper.
Yeah.
Almost like I'm going to blindly follow God because I'm not going to lean on my own understanding. But that's not what that verse is saying.
Yeah.
Lean not on your own understanding is saying, I'm putting my life in the Lord's. I know where he's going to take me, or I don't know where he's going to take me, but it doesn't not allow me to at least inquire about where we're going.
Yeah.
I can still seek understanding. I can still ask questions.
Yeah. I see people using that, like you said, take it out of context and use it as a crutch to not apply themselves.
Yeah.
Lean not on our own understanding is saying we need to unbecome the earthly version of ourselves to become kingdom-minded and lean on his understanding. Our understanding usually leads to limitations.
Are you saying like don't lean on your own understanding of like, so where my head goes. So like, I like the universe. I like space and stuff, but along with listening to scientists and astrophysicists talk about space, you come across a lot of atheists in that field.
Yeah.
What you're saying, does that mean like to not lean on my own understanding? It's not to just say, oh, science is the only 100% factual. Is that the same thing, or is that like a different?
Somewhat along the lines, but yeah, like leaning not on your own understanding is even seeing what science does have right and saying my limited knowledge of how the universe came into existence and it works can be supplemented by even exploring the deeper knowledge of what science has shown, how the universe came into existence and how it supports the Bible. Dr. Frank Turek is one of the best examples. And I recommend you guys go look at Frank Turek's work in using Christian apologetics of how science does support the Bible and how, as they've gotten deeper into even the atheists, understanding how the universe works, it supports the creation story in Genesis. And so diving deeper into that, understanding how most of the time when people see science and how the universe came into existence, they're expanding their understanding and not letting it limit themselves and being passive about learning those new things. The only thing that I see as they go deeper into the science side and they stay in that place of atheism is because their hearts aren't open to the fact that there is a God that would expect something from them, that would expect change, and ultimately a God that would hold them accountable to the areas they are still wrong in spiritually and wrong in their own understanding.
Right.
There's things that they don't want to surrender. So the accountable piece is huge, and for them giving up something they don't want to let go of.
Well, because their status is attached to a lot of that.
It is. But once again, that's leaning on their own understanding of what they think they can control and what they want to hold on to. And ultimately, if the Bible is true, which we believe it is, that's the limiting factor of staying stuck on your own understanding. It is holding them back from the bigger piece of life and ultimately salvation for their souls for eternity.
Got you.
Yeah.
So you know, like the quote, or you hear parents say it all the time, but kids are sponges. Like, be careful what you say around your kids.
Yeah. We talked about this just a while ago.
Yeah.
We both felt like we were sponges as kids. We went through that period of not being a sponge. But now, with this journey of challenging our understanding of what truly matters and what the true purpose is for our life individually and how it applies to everybody else, we have become more of a sponge now than even when we were a kid.
Yeah.
Because we realize that if we only buy into what our culture tells us, our families tell us, societal expectations, that's our only belief. We put a ceiling on ourselves and saying, hey, this is the system. This is what we buy into. Wake up, operate in the system, go to sleep, and wake up and do it all over again. And if we allow ourselves to believe that, it is a very limiting belief system.
Yeah.
But when we start asking why, and we start using our imagination, just like we talked about before, Jesus says that we are to have childlike faith. God does not have limitations. He is not bound by the constructs of the worldly system we live in. And to be able to believe in that, operate in that, dream in that, and say, hey, in my eyes and what I see, I don't see how that's possible. But when I lean on his understanding, I realize that with him, all things are possible. And that's why the Bible talks about that verse and possibilities through him. Yeah. Because we are bound by limitations.
So that's something like I wrestle with too, because there's part of that absorbing so much, just constantly being a sponge to new information, challenging ideas. But then there's also the truth of how to be like, since we're men, to be a man, we have to stand for something. We have to have values and we have to stand for this. So like, and I do think I'm maybe in a season where I'm really fine tuning what those values are. How do I stay open to absorb and to constantly challenge my ideas, but also be confident enough in a certain set of things? Does that make sense?
No, 100%. It's because the ideas that are non-negotiable have already been tested as absolute truth compared to God's word.
That's why I say, like, I think I'm fine-tuning those.
Yeah, because when you experience that and walk through those pieces and you realize, like, this is the ultimate truth based on what God designed, those are non-negotiable. You know, I've said for many years, it's very rare to find somebody who has a belief in anything that is so deep and so strong that they are willing to die for it. You know what I mean?
Right. And the only way you can get to that level is, it's the same principle of your true best friends are the ones you've had the hardest conversations with. Because you've been through the trenches, you've been through those tough moments, and you came out on the other side together.
Yes, 100%. Every relationship's going to face adversity.
Yeah.
But the best relationships are open-minded, and they're open with their hearts to say, hey, I welcome accountability. When you bring that accountability, I'm open to having the conversations, no matter how difficult they are, to navigate how this impacts us, what is true, how have I missed it, how have I gotten it right, and then how can we move forward of consistently doing those things that are healthy for the relationship, and how can I build a discipline and habit in my life to avoid and remove the unhealthy habits.
Well, and that's so important too, because it's very easy to look at a hard season and confuse it for, oh, we're just having a rough season, but you may just be repeating the cycle.
No doubt. Like to open yourself to say, hey, what am I doing that is consistently putting me in the same spot in my relationships over and over?
Yeah.
But most people, and it's hard, it is being willing to look in the darkest places of your life and your heart and say, man, what do I have to admit that I have consistently been doing, that I allowed in my life to put me here? It's the ultimate form of accountability when you can hold yourself accountable and take ownership of saying, I've been doing this to cause myself to repeat unhealthy habits and cycles in relationships with my spouse, my kids, coworkers, friends. And I now that I've looked into it, I now have the responsibility of doing the work and changing my habits to remove them.
That's good.
So not only is it hard to acknowledge and admit that, but then it's also hard to say, well, man, now I've got to become a different person in some areas to become a better version of myself, to keep myself from being in this cycle over and over. And
the sad thing I see too, I saw it in myself, especially whenever I was first going through it, but I feel like a lot of people are afraid to confront that because they realize a lot of issues, and not everybody has these issues, so not everybody's going to relate, but people that grew up in very abrasive childhoods, they almost hesitate to talk about it because they're like, I don't want to sound like I'm mommy issues, daddy issues, whatever. Like I don't want to be that guy. And it's like, you don't have to be that guy. You can still acknowledge what it was for what it was.
Yeah.
You don't have to. I mean, there is a part of that. Like, you shouldn't be afraid of what other people's judgment for the past that you couldn't control.
Yeah.
It's just a part of life. It's tough. It's what we talked about in the last episode, you know. You were dealt the cards you were dealt. It's just your job to play the best hand you can.
But being honest and transparent is so hard because as soon as you bring those things up, it doesn't fit into the expectations of what people have for you.
Yeah.
I mean, your life's supposed to be, oh man, you work hard, you make a lot of money, you've got everything together. Oh, your family is put together and you've got the good looking couple and the kids and they They're always dressed up. You got pictures of them they're successful in sports or in band and choir, and they've got the good grades. And also, if you bring up those other things and you're transparent and you're honest, well, why would anybody want to admit that when you're trying to keep it together and produce this shiny image that you're just excelling at life?
Right.
That's one of the things that makes it so hard for people to face that, admit that, talk about it, because it doesn't fit the expectations of what you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be just excelling, succeeding. And you're supposed to have maybe already moved past that, not be repeating the past mistakes of what you were raised in. But what people don't understand is our brains are such a tricky machine. And there are things that are hardwired in our brains, and it is easy to repeat the things that you despise. And when you find yourself doing that, you can find yourself in a situation where I have done as well. It's like, oh wow, like I just sounded like my dad in that moment. And then it was in a way that made me feel insecure and scared as a child. And even though I felt that way as a kid, I repeated it to my kids.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't want to. But because of habits and cycles, it is crazy how easy those are to come to the surface when we don't address them and actually work through them.
Yeah.
Even if it's something we don't like.
That's so good. How do you think the people who raise this shape the way we pursue our lives?
The younger you are, it defines everything. As a kid, you don't know
Anything.
how to question, what to question, to even compare.
Right.
You know, comparison gets such a bad rap, and it depends on how we are comparing ourselves. If we are comparing ourselves and communicating in our own mind that we are lacking compared to somebody else, it's a problem.
Right.
But to compare and say, hey, this is what I've been operating and doing, and I feel like it's been working pretty good. But in comparison to this, could this be healthier for me as an individual? I see this person doing something really well, and I like the fruit it's producing in their life. You know, can I implement that in mine and even improve where I currently am? That compare and contrast in our lives to improve and grow is a great tool of being able to use comparison to help us evolve. But as a kid, we don't know. You know, having childlike faith, we are trusting our parents with everything that comes with raising us to be protected, safe, fed, sheltered, all those pieces.
Yeah.
And so when they raise us, we do inherit the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And when it comes to accountability, the best version of myself for my kids is whatever I've been willing to put in, face, all the giants in my own heart, in my own mind, that I've been willing to say, you know what, hey, I've allowed you to hang out and push me with fear to make terrible decisions for many years. No longer am I going to allow that to happen.
That's good.
And when I face those giants myself, I can now grow and become a better version of myself, and my kids benefit from it because they begin seeing that demonstrated in my life, and it helps them understand, okay, I've seen the evolution of my dad do certain things. I saw a distinct shift to where he was kinder, he was more patient. He did a good job of answering my questions and spending time with me, really explaining how life works and why, as a family, we do certain things. So that when they become an adult, they say, hey, that's my responsibility now to confront. I saw my dad do it. It was uncomfortable at times. He had to apologize to me for things, but since he apologized, I saw him take accountability and ownership of the things that he was trying to break in his own life, the cycles and loops that he was stuck in. And since they saw that example, they know now that's my responsibility. That when I've allowed habits to negatively impact the people around me, I have to take time, confront them, ask questions, lean on people that have gone before me. Maybe I got to call my dad. Dad, how did you do that? Like what made you make that change? And then that's when I can sit down and say, hey, it's not easy. But that's why you honor your mother and father. That's why you have the command from God to be respectful to your elders. because they can give you the answers to life. God lets us cheat when we take the test of life. You can phone a friend and you can say, hey, have you ever faced something like this? And your grandparents, or maybe your pastor at your church, or one of your elders, they can say, yep, I've been there.
Yeah.
This is what I chose. I chose answer C, and it blew up in my face. And you're probably thinking about choosing C as well. And I'll tell you why it's not a good answer to choose. And how I learned later in life that A is actually the correct answer. And if you choose it, you will not have the same regret I do now for consistently trying to force the answer C.
I had a teacher my senior year that I wish I had in 8th grade. Because in the 8th grade, I had a teacher tell me I was a waste of time. So that negatively altered my perspective on school entirely. But I had a teacher in my senior year tell me, because I was borderline failing the class just because I wasn't trying.
Because you thought you were a waste of time.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was senior year, who cares,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So it was, but this teacher told me one time, he said, dude, if you would just try, I would pass you guaranteed. You know, like,
yeah,
that's all he was looking for. And like I said, I wish I had him in the 8th grade because it definitely would have shifted that trajectory.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters is, are you trying?
Yeah.
Because the more you try, the closer you get to that, whatever it is, finding your purpose, finding your career, finding something you love, finding the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Like, you got to get out there and try. Mm-hmm. The only way you guarantee yourself losing is by not trying.
Yeah.
And I think that's all that teacher expected of me, was just to try. And if I would have known that the bar was set that low, I would have not self-deprecated so much. You know?
That's deep. And that's just a few words that he spoke to you. He gave value to your effort.
Right.
When originally you thought it was just worthless, potentially, or a waste of time.
Yeah.
To even apply yourself. Those words gave your effort, just your effort, value, and gave you something to shoot for.
Man, if I knew that, well, that's where I would go with, just to go a step farther than family, like how the people that raise you shape the way you pursue things. Yeah, man, like teachers are so important too. Like, I feel so bad for teachers going through post-COVID right now. Like, it's got to be a hellscape right now. Because they do, man. Like, and I feel like when I had that teacher tell me I was a waste of time, suddenly I saw every single teacher look at me that way.
Because you allowed yourself to believe it.
Yes. But if I would have had that one teacher that actually believed in me sooner, I believe I would have seen things completely different. I feel like I would have definitely applied myself more. And this is not me like blaming the teacher for me not trying. That's ultimately on me. Yeah. But again, as a kid, you're so open-minded to everything.
Yeah.
So you just take everything as truth.
Easily influenced, at a younger age, yes.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
We do say that a lot.
100% we do.
All right, so that was conclusion of part 1. We're changing things up a little bit. As you could tell from our previous uploads, we're going to be... So we record these full episodes, but not everybody has time to watch an hour-long podcast. So we're breaking it up into 3 videos to be posted on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to make it a little easier, more accessible for busy parents, busy people.
Yeah.
We get it. I enjoy 3-hour-long podcasts, but you're a busy man.
Kids and sports schedules,
Yeah, so just trying to be mindful of that. So follow along with us this week as we dive deeper into what keeps us stuck in patterns that sabotage our future.
Money, dude.